What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. It's time to talk about the Toronto Raptors because we got a lot of rumors this morning surrounding OG Anunoby. We got Fred VanVleet in the rumor mill again. We also got two teams that apparently are going to be very competitive with the proposals because they do not want the other team to get OG Anunoby. So I'm going to be discussing that as well. So I'm going to be discussing all of this. I'm going to be going through some of the teams as well, talking about what the Raptors could potentially ask for OG Anunoby as well. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Clan Holmes. So Clan Holmes, thank you so much for supporting this channel. To your likes and comments, it is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about the first rumor here, and this was being reported on NBA Central that Chris Haynes is reporting Memphis does not want New Orleans to get OG, and New Orleans does not want Memphis to get OG. Bidding war. This is by Chris Haynes, and obviously understandable because both of those teams play in the same division and are probably going to be two teams that are going to be very competitive for quite a while in the Western Conference. But let's talk about our other rumor as well that was being reported, and that was that there's an increasing belief that OG is ready to move on from Toronto per Chris Haynes as well. And I find this one a little bit more less believable because I will state one thing. What has been one name that we've been hearing so much about for the last week or so? OG Anunoby. And it's a great way for a lot of these reporters to gather a lot of attention towards their podcast, towards some of the articles they're writing, and also some of the networks they may be working with. So again, OG did do an interview with one of the Raptors reporter, Michael Grange, and he said, I can't really do anything about those rumors. So obviously, we don't know how much truth there is to that. But let's break down this article that was, shout out to NBA GM on Twitter as well. They posted an article about this, and let's talk about this. Now, this article went on to state the Toronto Raptors are receiving a lot of interest in OG Anunoby. The New York Knicks have reportedly offered 3 first-round picks for Anunoby. The Memphis Grizzlies, New Orleans Pelicans are also interested in the Raptors forward. There's an increasing belief that OG Anunoby is ready to move on from the Raptors. From Toronto, the Raptors are considered the key team to watch a week from the trade deadline. It's unclear what Masai Ujiri's plan is for his underachieving team. Both the Grizzlies and Pelicans have a host of young players and draft picks that they could offer to the Raptors in a trade for Anunoby. Both teams reportedly do not want to see the other land the talented two-way forward. Now, obviously, this is huge news for the Raptors, and this is great news for the Raptors because you obviously want a lot of teams fighting for OG Anunoby. Now you got the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. Again, two teams that play in the same division. So you have to understand that if the other team were to get it now, all of a sudden this becomes really challenging, especially for a team like the Pelicans, given how much they have dropped off. I mean, just a few weeks ago, it seems like not too long ago, we were discussing them being at the top of the Eastern Conference. They were third, I believe, or fourth, and now all of a sudden they're looking at a play-in tournament. So obviously I can see the Pelicans being more desperate than the Grizzlies. But let's talk about the Pelicans roster and what the Raptors could potentially get back in a trade. Now, OG Anunoby makes about $18 million. So having a look at the Pelicans roster here, you will have to acquire some sort of salary to make up for at least come close to that $18 million. One player I'm obviously looking at is Devontae Graham. I'm not big on that contract, especially the way he has been performing, but it's either going to be him or Larry Nance Jr. that you're going to have to include, because when you're looking at some of the younger players that the Raptors could potentially target, someone like a Dyson Daniels would be someone that is very intriguing to the Raptors. The Raptors had actually interviewed Dyson Daniels before he got drafted, and he was actually high on their radar. Just the Raptors did not have a top 10 pick, which made it difficult, obviously, to get him. But then also you look at someone like a Trey Murphy III. He could be a very interesting pickup for the Raptors. 22 years old. He's making $3.2 million. And another player I really would like the Raptors to look at is Herb Jones, $1.7 million as well. So again, if you're acquiring someone like a Devontae Graham, that's $11 million. Dyson Daniels is another 5.5. That's about $16 million. And then I'm going to be realistic. You're probably not going to get both Herb and Trey Murphy. But let's say you get Trey Murphy. That's $3.2 million. Now, I do want to be honest and have a realistic approach to this. Obviously, me being a Raptors fan, I would obviously want Herb Jones, or excuse me, I would want Herb Jones would be awesome as well. But personally, I would want Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy III. But you have to be honest with yourselves. Like, ask yourselves, if you're a Raptors fan and you're watching this, would you give up Precious Achiuwa, Christian Koloko, and picks for a 25-year-old like OG Anunoby? The honest answer is you probably don't. Like, you want to hold on to a lot of the assets. So realistically, the Raptors will either get Dyson Daniels or Trey Murphy III. I don't see the Pelicans including both of those players in a trade. So it's very unlikely you get both of those. It's probably a combination of Larry Nance, Devontae Graham, one of them, like I said, Dyson Daniels, and maybe Herb Jones, and maybe a future first round lottery protected again. So you have to be realistic with your approach as well. The Pelicans do have a lot to offer, but you're realistically not going to get both Dyson and Trey Murphy. Now, let's quickly talk about Trey Murphy because he's a player I'm really fond of. Now, taking a look at Trey Murphy here, for those who may not be familiar, like he's 6'9", 206 pounds. He's listed as a small forward, which is really good for the Raptors because OG Anunoby normally plays that position. So you essentially could replace him with a younger player like Trey Murphy, who's only 22 years old. And taking a look at his stats, like you realize he's doubled his points production this season with the Pelicans. Obviously, his minutes have gone up from 13 to 29, but you notice last season he was averaging 5.4 points. This season he's averaging 12.6 points. And not only that, one of the main concerns for the Raptors has been three-point shooting. Look at Trey Murphy's three-point production there. It's not only the fact that he's shooting an unbelievable 39.5% from the three-point line, he's also doing it on 5.4 three-point attempts per game, which is quite a lot. Again, so you essentially, if you're the Raptors and you're trading OG Anunoby, you could potentially get his replacement, at least offensively. Again, I don't know how good Trey Murphy is defensively, but you're essentially getting, like, Trey Murphy's 22 years old on a very good contract. And essentially in 2 seasons, I could see him putting up similar numbers to OG Anunoby. So you're essentially getting his replacement right there. And one of the biggest things for the Raptors as well is free throws. Look at his free throw percentage is absolutely unbelievable. He went from shooting 88%, which is already really good, to shooting 92.3% this season. And again, like you take a look at his statistics across the board. Field goal percentage, he's shooting 39.4 last season. This year, he's shooting 48%. Amazing player. I would absolutely want the Raptors to absolutely, again, if you're starting with a trade with the Pelicans, it absolutely has to start with Trey Murphy. I want this player, call me crazy, even more than Dyson Daniels. I know Dyson Daniels could be a really intriguing player, but he's averaging 1.1 steals a game already as well. So really good young player on a very reasonable contract. He's going to be locked in. But one thing I will say, guys, like I'm big on Dyson Daniels, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say no to him. But if you do trade for Dyson Daniels, the hope is that he would be your future point guard. But I feel like the thing with Dyson Daniels, he's listed at, I believe, like 6'7", something crazy. So you would have a taller point guard, which is great. But then the thing is, if your goal is to build around Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam, like both of those players operate in the paint. And Dyson Daniels is a really good player. Again, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that the Raptors should not trade for him if they get the opportunity, but Dyson Daniels isn't a good three-point shooter. So now, like, his skill sets, in terms of his skill sets, it's actually very similar to Scotty Barnes, someone who can pass the ball, someone who can rebound, not a great shooter, very high IQ player who's a good defender as well. So again, you have to question, like, is it going to be one of those things where it's overlapping skills again, right? So that's the only thing with Dyson Daniels. I really like him, but if he's never going to be a great three-point shooter, you have to wonder how that's going to affect, Scotty Barnes in the future as well. So again, just something to think about. But talking about the Grizzlies, obviously they're another team we have to discuss as well. Now, taking a look at their roster right here, OG Anunoby could be a really nice fit. I know they're probably one of the teams that are less inclined to trade OG Anunoby just because of how well they're performing, but the roster is just such a beautiful roster. The way it's set up, like you look at the starting five: Steven Adams at the 5, Jaren Jackson at the 4, you have Dylan Brooks at the 3, you have obviously John Morant at the 1, and then you have Desmond Bane at the 2 as well. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they interchange with Desmond and Dylan Brooks there, but for OG Anunoby, $18 million, I'm looking at something like a Desmond Bane. Call me crazy. That's the starting point. And you have to realize the Raptors are in a position where they don't have to trade OG Anunoby. They're not being forced to trade him. It's not a situation where he's a free agent. He's locked in for another year as well. So if the Pelicans aren't giving you what you want, and if the Grizzlies aren't giving you what they want, you don't trade him. But if I'm the Raptors, I'm asking for Desmond Bane as a starting point. 24 years old. He's averaging at least like 21 points, I believe, which is really good. He's averaging more points than OG, which I know a lot of people may suggest, why would the Grizzlies do that? I think OG Anunoby just provides so much better defense. Desmond Bane is a pretty good defender as well, but OG's versatility on defense is amazing. I mean, OG Anunoby is a pretty good defender as well, but Desmond Bane, right off the bat, one of the biggest issues with the Raptors, as I stated when I was talking about the Pelicans roster, is three-point shooting. Desmond Bane comes in. He's one of the better three-point shooters around the NBA. You can play him at the shooting guard position. He can just light up the three-point shots easily. He's going to be a very nice fit. That's $2 million there. And then you obviously have to include about close to 16 million more dollars. Maybe you take a bad contract like Danny Green in return. Expiring contract, I know it seems bad, but maybe Danny Green, that's still $12 million. And maybe you look at guys like, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce his name here, Jake LaRavia. And I know I've completely butchered that. I don't know enough of his game, but could be a very intriguing young player. 6'8", 235 pounds. Shoots three-point ball. Okay, he's not, I don't actually, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he shoots the three-point ball all that well, but he could be a very intriguing young player. seems like he could be very interesting with the Raptors in terms of fit. Obviously, the Raptors have 6'9" guys. Another player I'm potentially looking at is someone like David Roddy. David Roddy was actually someone the Raptors had discussed about drafting, but the thing was, David Roddy was projected to go in the mid to late second rounds. He was actually selected, I believe, at the 23rd position from the Grizzlies. So again, a lot of interesting players, and obviously there's Zaire Williams as well. You could potentially target, but the Pelicans, let's be honest, the Pelicans roster and their young players are way more intriguing. The Pelicans, if they're going to not trade, and if the Grizzlies are willing to give up more, you're going to have to ask the Grizzlies to include a lot more picks. The only thing I will state, guys, if the Raptors do decide to trade for someone like a Dylan Brooks, he is heading into free agency. He's going to be asking for a much bigger payday as well. So that's the only thing. Like, I know Dylan Brooks is Canadian. There's a good chance he would sign with the Raptors, but that could be a gamble as well. So you're essentially going to pay him a lot of money. And he's not a great three-point shooter, I believe, this year at least. So that's the thing. Like, he's not a young player. He could fit with the timeline of Pascal a little bit better, if that's what you're thinking, and kind of replace OG's defense. Let's be honest. Dylan Brooks is a really good defender. That's the only thing, though. You'd have to include a lot more besides Dylan Brooks as well, but could be interesting. Let's talk about our next trade rumor here. Now, this was also being reported by NBA Central, and this was reporting the Raptors are looking for young players in trade talks centered around OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet per ESPN's Brian Windhorst. Now, this should be more credible source. Brian Windhorst isn't one that makes up BS. Let's be honest. He stated that guys in the league to put around the core that they have around Rookie of the Year Scottie Barnes. So obviously you want some young players as well. And not only for that reason, I just think the way the roster is constructed, you're going to have to pay a lot of guys. Like Gary Trent Jr. is assuming we don't move him, you're going to have to pay him and Pascal in this offseason. And you move guys like OG and Fred. You want guys that are on cheaper contracts at least. So a team that is rumored, I have already spoken about OG and Anuoby, so I'm not going to really speak on him. A team I'm going to be discussing is the Suns. They have been rumored to be interested in Fred VanVleet. And taking a look at the roster here, you'll notice, like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, they're not giving you Mikal Bridges. They're not giving us Mikal Bridges for Fred VanVleet. And you really have to question, like, what assets do the Suns have that they can give us? I don't know how many first-round picks they're willing to give up, but even those are going to be probably outside the lottery. So they're not going to be great first-round picks. And outside of Mikal Bridges, like, are you giving us Landry Shamet and Dario Saric? Like, that's a terrible return for Fred VanVleet. So unless the Raptors want to go crazy, there were reports yesterday that apparently that DeAndre Ayton has people in the Raptors organization that really like him. So unless maybe you want to do a Chris Boucher and Fred VanVleet for DeAndre Ayton, again, I don't know if the Phoenix Suns do that, but that could be a trade you look at. But personally, if you ask me, DeAndre Ayton makes way too much money for a center that puts up those numbers. Again, you could probably get someone cheaper that does the same thing that DeAndre Ayton does. And I will always mention one thing. If the Raptors are to acquire a center, at least for one that is very young, you're going to have to question, like, he can't shoot the three-point ball. How's that going to work around Scottie and Pascal? You need to, if you're going to tear this down and rebuild around Scottie and Pascal, you need shooters. So you can't just have guys that are just operating in the paint. That's going to be terrible for the Raptors. And you have to question, like, if teams start playing zone defenses and you got DeAndre Ayton, Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and then you have to bunch, obviously, DeAndre Ayton because you need three-point shooters out there. Is he going to be upset with Nick Nurse? He was obviously clearly not happy with the Suns because he wasn't playing in the playoffs. I believe it was the last game they got eliminated, but there are some rumors about that he wasn't happy about his playing time. So then, the question becomes, is he not going to be happy with the Raptors? And then all of a sudden it gets really messy. But I will say one thing before I end this video with Fred VanVleet. I think if you get the return you want for, you're looking for an OG and an Anuoby with all the players, you absolutely have to target a center if you're going to trade Fred VanVleet, or if you decide you're going to keep Fred VanVleet and move Gary Trent Jr. Because look, let's be honest, even if the Raptors move OG Anunoby and one of Fred or Gary Trent Jr., they're not going to have the money in the offseason to sign a center. So essentially, you're dealing with the same issues in terms of defensive rebounding in the future as well, just with a different type of roster. So I think if you're moving Fred VanVleet, you absolutely have to acquire a center or find at least a way to acquire a center as well. Obviously, the Magic could be a team as well, but the Magic have salary cap like crazy this offseason, so they're not really inclined to trade for Fred VanVleet as much as maybe the Suns have. So again, with Fred VanVleet, it's a little bit more complicated. I don't think you get the assets you want in return. It might have to be a 3-team trade, especially if a team like the Lakers are involved. We'll see what happens. Very interesting rumors. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and also let me know, whose offer would you like more? And what players would you like from the Pelicans or the Grizzlies, or even, the Indiana Pacers? The Knicks were offering 3 first-round picks as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, who leads the NBA in field goal percentage? Is it A, Rudy Gobert? Is it B, Nicholas Claxton? Is it C, Jared Allen? Or is it D, Mason Plumlee? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. So thank you so much for watching this video. And I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.